get this party started. So welcome, Sarah, to the hot seat tonight. For those of you who are new joining us tonight, people always trickle in. There is definitely a Mormon Standard Time on these, but we will kind of let people come in as they go. But if you are new, please like our Facebook page, give us a subscription on YouTube, help support the channel. We're just kind of trying to grow this a little bit and help it move along. And there was something else. Oh, I had a long weekend with my kids, so I'm a little bit like I got to get readjusted here. They put me through it this weekend. They were on one. So very, very busy, very active. I wish I had that much energy. I wish I even had half that energy. That would be fantastic.
Amen.
So those just joining us and just coming in, please keep your microphone off and your camera off, and we will hopefully get to a point where we will ask if there are questions from the audience. At that point, we will ask you one at a time to go ahead and turn on your microphone and your camera, and if you have questions, but we'll let you know when that time comes. So in the meantime, we'd like to welcome Sarah tonight. Sarah.
Yes.
Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. So now I love these interviews where I don't know you beforehand because it makes it feel all the more organic, just asking questions that out of natural curiosity, I get to know you, right? So instead of like, hey, I know all about you, but I'm going to ask the questions anyways and try and pretend as if I don't. So it feels more natural getting to know you that way. So welcome. I know that you've been in a few movies, a few shows. I mean, not going to lie, we might have IMDb'd you. Did I get that right? IMDb?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us kind of the short and skinny of where you're at. What's going on? Tell us you. Who are you?
Oh my goodness. Doesn't that seem like it should be an easy question to answer, but sometimes it feels hard. So
that one was pretty broad, so maybe it's too broad, but
no, you guys, you're awesome. It's totally like fair game question. I think so summed up, I was born in Monterey Bay area, California. That's what I wrote on my bio. So having grown up in Seaside, like if anyone is at all familiar with what Seaside was in the 70s, like that speaks for itself. And then we lived, my family, we lived kind of off and on in Saitama-ken Kawaguchi-shi, which is next to Tokyo. And then I'm a quarter Asian, I'm a quarter Japanese. My father's mother is from that area in Japan. Cool. And then we lived also in Utah for a long time. I served my mission in Nagoya, Japan. And then I graduated from BYU with a degree in Japanese and a minor in psych. And then I started like getting into acting in around 2001. And then it was only like, 14, 15 short years later, finally started to get some speaking parts in films. And yeah, that's where I am now. So I work full time for the church, and I still audition and work in film where I can. I teach acting for it's a teen acting class that I teach, and yeah, I'm always looking to like do more things and yeah,
broaden your horizons a little bit.
Constantly.
So Sarah, I lived in Seaside.
Shut up! When did you live there?
So I lived there as a kid because my dad was stationed at Fort Ord there in Monterey. So it was a big giant army base, and now it's Cal State Monterey. So
yeah.
But I lived off the base for a little bit in Seaside, and then lived on the base for a little bit, and then back off the base for a little bit. So yeah, I know Seaside.
You know Seaside, okay? Because the thing is, like, sometimes I feel like I think the face that I present to the world is going to look like, oh, she's probably, she lives in Utah, so she must have, and I went to Orem High School. So I think that I could be associated with that group, and there's nothing wrong with that group. But just when I was a kid, so like Corey would probably know the validity of this. Like I remember playing at the park near my cousin's house when we were kids, and there was blood on the sidewalk from where a man had been knifed to death. And So like if when you're a kid and you grow up in that kind of neighborhood where just like that's something that you just knew as a child, like, yeah, somebody was like killed here by the park where we're playing. And to have that kind of a background and everything that comes along with growing up in a neighborhood like what Seaside was at that time, I feel like that just, it sets up a different kind of a mindset for the world and a different perspective. And also being part Asian, I feel like I know how I look, but like for me on the inside, my comfort food, like even before this, I was feeling a little bit nervous and I'm like, okay, you know what? I just need like a nice hot bowl of rice, some gomashio and tuna fish, like a miso dressing, a little bit of nori, everything's gonna be okay. Like that's my comfort food.
Really?
Yeah, no, I remember how bad the area was. I used to walk to school. I was in 5th grade. I used to walk to school and walk past the prostitutes. They used to wave at me and say hi when I went to school.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
But I always tell people, like, I grew up poor, and they're like, what do you mean you grew up poor? I'm like, my dad was enlisted Army and we had to live in like expensive places like California. It wasn't like always living in like the cheap places of town. So like for my dad, like he gets a stipend, but then living in California, we had to live in Seaside because it was close to the bay. It was right off the base, but you know, it's still in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah, it's different. Like there's some beautiful parts, and I know this might seem like, I feel like, oh my goodness, this may seem so odd to come out of the gate swinging with that. I guess like I just, like I jokingly will say I'm blonde Asian, but I really I mean it because I think in today's world there's more and more of us that are multiracial and that we don't just identify with being white or being Asian or what have you. And just coming from a neighborhood like where we lived in Seaside at that time, there was a lot of Vietnamese, there's a lot of Black, there's a lot of Latinos, and the you know, people that look like my skin color are the minority. But as a child, it wasn't until it was pointed out to me that I noticed, like, oh, there's not a lot of people that are like, you know, like blonde hair and blue eyed. Like I just thought we're all friends and we're all hanging out. And you know, ideally the world would be more.
Well, it was different back then. Like you were raised differently. Like we were raised back then, like do not look at people and their features. Like I remember like watching that video in school where like the blue-eyed kids couldn't go do anything and they got isolated and they got discriminated against because they had blue eyes. And I watched that video and it was kind of like, see, you shouldn't judge people by any of their features. And then we live in a totally different time now. We're supposed to judge everybody, or we're supposed to identify on features. And so, I mean, we just grew up in a different time. Like I had friends of all different types, but I never said I have a Black friend or an Asian friend or a Hispanic friend. They were just my friends. And we went out and had a great time. So it's just different.
That's, yeah, it's different. That's, I don't know. Yeah, how do you
different times today?
Different times.
Great. So as far as, I mean, gosh, you've got like so many things that you're on your plate that you've worked with. I mean, right now you're working for the church, right? What exactly do you do for the church?
So I work in the research department. I'm a field coordinator, which just essentially means I'm supporting the researchers with different studies that they're doing. And that's been super insightful, especially if you're somebody who watches General Conference. Then a lot of the talks and the subjects that came up, particularly in this last conference, it's a lot of the statistics that they're giving, or like when they're, you know, speaking to how, let's say, COVID-19 has affected more people that are of a lower socioeconomic level. Like being in the research division, we were all like, oh yeah, I remember when we were studying that. I remember when our researchers were talking to people in different parts of the world. And so anyway, it's interesting for sure.
So are you guys like the fact checkers then? Kind of like, okay, this is what COVID-19 is actually doing to the world, sort of thing.
I don't, maybe fact checkers, but it's, I think that it's more so trying to get, I think the best way I've heard it described is that there may be questions that leaders at church headquarters, so like the prophet, his apostles, general authorities may have about what's happening with members around the world. And the best way for them to keep a pulse on this is to utilize the researchers that we have and to find out, you know, to reach out to members in their respective areas. And that's where I come in, where I'm the one that's contacting members wherever they are in the world to set up maybe interviews or focus groups to be able to talk to these researchers and to be candid about what their experience is. So whether it's what's your experience being a woman in Relief Society, what's your experience being a single adult, a young single adult, not being affiliated with the church anymore, the whole gamut.
Okay. That makes sense. So does that kind of lead you in then for some of the like roles that the church may have with like, you know, hey, we're doing some, I know they've got, what is it, down in Goshen or something, they've got that big thing that The Chosen has been filming at. And do you have like insight into that sort of stuff? Are you like, okay, hey, they're going to be casting for this, we've been kind of doing some research around it, and we're going to be filming this or like doing this project?
Not even a little bit.
Oh,
No, no. I think with the church, what they do with their casting on their website is pretty wide open, where anybody, if you are interested in being a part of any kind of church project, you can go to, it's something like, if you just look up church and casting on the main site, you should be able to be linked to it pretty well. And then from there, like they'll just send out notifications when they're looking for people for what's being filmed in Goshen, or like when it comes to the New Testament videos, or even utilizing the place, what the church has to look like Old Jerusalem and such. And they've been filming the Chosen season 2 there. For me, I didn't have any kind of in on getting a part of it. And I think I just have too many freckles to be believable in Jerusalem.
Hey, there's makeup. You just pile it on, right?
That's what I say, but apparently they're just like, no, you really don't look like you're, in Israel at that time.
A little too pale.
Little too pale, a little too many freckles.
so are you still active then, looking for roles within like, the church videos or another like T.C. Christensen movie or something along those lines?
Wait, what were you saying again? Like, am I still active in like looking for roles or auditioning?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So I go through my agency. I'm with TMG. So pretty much whatever my agent sends over my way, then I'll audition for. And then a lot of things right now, even before the pandemic, a lot of things were moving to doing video submissions online. So that's made it a lot more accessible for people across the board, whether you're, wherever you are, to be able to send in auditions and even have like auditions and callbacks where it's in a Zoom meeting kind of like this and auditioning for a role. And then sometimes I'll do things like, once in a while, I may find something on Facebook that I'll submit for, just like anybody else, or I'll work on projects if they're friends and I know them and I know that I like working with them and they want to invite me on board their project, then I'll do that. But I'm pretty selective, because I've come to the conclusion there's only so much time, energy, and life in the day, and I can't chase down like every single thing and try to be everywhere at once. So I just have to be really selective with what projects I take on and what I decide to do.
Gotcha. So how important is it then for you? I mean, is this kind of something that's still like a dream of yours to really like hit it big? Or you just kind of like, I like doing roles as they come up, but it's not my main focus? I mean, where's your heart at with all of this?
It's constantly evolving. I don't know.
I bet it is.
I don't know.
Yes and a no answer.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like with acting, there's always a little bit of that like crazy side of like, somehow it's like, no, I'm gonna do it. Like Morgan Freeman got one of his first roles when he was 50 something. It's totally possible. Grandma Moses started painting when she was 70 something. Anything's possible. So I think there's that part of me thinking there's always a possibility, but just the reality of, and this is where I would say, like, not to sound like I'm complaining on behalf of all women that have ever worked in film, but the reality is I'm over 40 and I'm a female. A lot of people are not paying big bucks to see somebody that looks like me and my demographic star in a film. That's just the reality. There's only so many Steel Magnolia movies that are going to come out in a lifetime. So so then I think the question more is like, okay, well, what are my other talents and skill sets and things that I enjoy doing? In terms of the heart of it is storytelling and storytelling truthfully. And that's where I've really enjoyed being able to teach acting for the teens, and then also work as, you know, as a producer on different projects, and then just having more of a desire to get more involved in the creative side of things, having more creative control. But still, of course, if there's an opportunity, anytime I have an opportunity to act in film, then I'm all over that.
That's awesome. Now I know. Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No,
I
I was
was
gonna say that I've always wanted to. I always had like an idea of like a cool movie that would be really cool for like LDS. Be like take kind of like the avenging angel, kind of like a protective detail for the general authorities, but make it kind of a John Wick kind of a secret like agent kind of thing. You know what I mean? And then it'd be a kind of like you know, continuation from like the past. You know, gunslingers, kind of like they fight like John Wick. You know, they travel around the world. They got their different networks. You know, they show up in Mexico City, and it's like, oh yeah, here's our little secret hideout with all of our gadgets, and that'd be kind of a fun movie.
or he's going to be like the U-Ball of LDS movies or something, if you know who that is. So
So Sarah, I know you also have said that you are interested in comedy and that you like to do stand-up comedy. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I do. I haven't done a lot of it recently for various reasons, but I do like when I've been able to do like open mic. I enjoy doing open mic night. I like comedy improv. I studied at the Groundlings in Hollywood for a little bit, and then also with some other friends that taught comedy improv. And so I think within the study of like comedy improv, there's a lot that is good life philosophy and also good acting philosophy. But when it comes to just doing like open mic or stand up, that was I think sometimes when I'm anxious to just be on stage or do something, then that's, I know I can do it. It's just for example, Wise Guys in Salt Lake City in downtown, you should show up like an hour and a half early, like 4:30 on a Wednesday. It was how it was, to wait in line to hopefully get in at 6, to be in the 20 people that are going to be able to do the open mic, or that won't start until 7 or 7:30 and will last until 9. And you probably get up on stage as long as you're within that group. And so just that kind of time commitment, I feel like I just realistically, I had to figure out like, okay, I'm not that committed like some of these people are to doing open mic, even though I enjoy it, but just kind of, and there's other places where you can do it, like whether it's, you know, in Utah County or Salt Lake County. But yeah, just again, like just trying to recognize like how my limitations of how much I can do in a given week.
Right. Well, cool. Well, I'm just going to totally shift gears here, and I hope you guys don't care. But so you are single and you have never, nope. You don't like the term never been married. Do you like to say not married yet? Right? Because
I do.
yeah,
I
it's
don't,
optimistic.
yeah, I think not married yet. I don't like the never been married. And I think mostly I feel like it would be nice to just refer to ourselves as humans, you know, as members of the, if you're a member of the church, great. If you're not, great. But just to like, I think, and it's not unique to any one culture, but just there's so much emphasis and labeling put on like, well, do you have somebody that you're attached to or not? And anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know, since we're a single podcast, we have to point that out. But so tell us a little about your adventures with dating. I know you had stated you've been engaged twice. Like what's your kind of storyline with dating and not married yet status?
I don't know where to begin. Do you mean like, well, just I've dated. Yes, I've been engaged twice, like in over my life, and once was in 2001, and so it's been a while, and that I think these were like really good life lessons of what not to do when dating.
Well, share those. We'd love to hear them.
I don't know that, like, don't rush, things like that. And then and a couple of years ago, it ended, the second engagement. That one was the beginning. or it ended around March of 2020. So just over a year ago. And I'm trying to think, like, I guess, like, again, like for me, I found like some people, they will go out on, I don't know, maybe it's more of like a Utah thing, but there's some people I know they'll go out on a breakfast date and a lunch date and a dinner date. And for me, like, that's too much. I do better with just having one, person at a time that I'm focused on. And I don't like to jam pack my day or my week with having different dates on different times or what have you. I think there's something to be said for quality over quantity, for me. And like, I'm trying to think of, I've definitely been on some bad dates, I guess. Like, are we thinking,
Yeah, you
like,
can share them, just don't share names, but you can share the
our
details.
names? Like, I don't know, like, I remember years ago, I think, and this is like, I don't want to rat out any family members, but so I have a family member that years ago, this is so long ago, she was trying to set me up with her husband, a guy that worked with her husband. And I was like, this guy, like, I was like, he's in jail. And she's like, I know, but he's gonna be out soon. I'm like, he's married. She's like, it's a really rocky marriage. So, and I was kind of, yeah, I was like, I think I'm okay if I don't go out with him. I think we're okay. I don't think we need to be desperate with this. And yeah, she was just like, well, he's really, he's cute. He's gonna have a job when he's out of jail.
He's gonna have a job. You're like, oh, that's good. That's all
Yeah,
I have on my list. He just needs
it's
to have a
called
job.
work release, Sarah. It's called work release.
Work release. I know. Just like, no. But I think what's interesting, like, there was one time where one thing I found with, like, when it comes to online dating, for example, is I feel that there's if, like, to go more with my gut or my instinct, because I think, like, in acting, there's just different times where I felt almost like there's this clear guidance of even stage direction, like, just move a little to the left, or okay, just hold this moment for a beat, and then you're going to look up at just the right moment. And I'll feel a little bit of that nudge or guidance when I'm really in flow, when things are all clicking together. And what I found is that with, like, translating that to dating is, like, for example, when it comes to online dating, there's so many times that, like, years ago, I thought, like, well, his picture's not awful, even though he doesn't text in complete sentences, and it doesn't seem like we have anything to talk about except for his CrossFit. Maybe he's nice on the phone, or maybe he doesn't want to talk on the phone because he's, hard of hearing or something. And so, just like be equal opportunity. And maybe, like, just because, like, the dinner date was awkward, it could get better on a second or third date. And now I feel very much more like, look, if you're not interested in them to begin with, if I get a creepy vibe early on, it doesn't change. If we're not connecting, if we're not communicating via text message, it's pretty rare that over the phone it's going to be amazing. And if the phone conversation's awkward, it's pretty rare that in person it's going to just suddenly click. It doesn't really work that way for me. So usually, like, I feel like if there's something about the person that I feel like, okay, I feel good about this, I'm okay with, like, messaging them, or I'm okay with talking with them, I'm okay with meeting somewhere in public with them, so there's witnesses, then that's okay. But I'm pretty I would say more intentional and deliberate about how I spend my time, just because I've been on dates. Like, I remember one time, without having a bit of a filtering system, being on a dinner date with a guy that was telling me, and I hope he's not listening, whoever this guy is, but he was just saying, he's like, well, yeah, my divorce isn't finalized, and I don't know why my wife has a restraining order against me. I mean, I have a concealed weapons permit, so it's totally fine. And so there's, like, and I think, like, somewhere in his mind, he thought this was all fine. But for me, I'm like, so you're telling me you're still married, that you have a restraining order against you for some reason, and you have a concealed weapons permit. So that means I don't know if you're carrying a weapon on you, and I'm a single female. So these are all red flags for me. And he was just like, wow, like he just couldn't understand why I was like, don't call me until you're actually single. But I just, like, for me, I like, that's for me, that's what I'm comfortable with. And I've got to be okay with saying, these are my boundaries. This is what I want. This is what I'm comfortable with. And for someone else, if they're okay going out with that guy because whatever their reasons are, that's totally fine. But that's, you know, that's what works for you. It doesn't work for me.
Well, that's the scary thing, is that I think we need to do a whole segment of like, guys, here's what you need to do. Like, you got to put a little effort in. You can't do some crazy crap. Like, you can't say, hey, yeah, I got rope and tape in the trunk, but that's just because I'm a construction guy. Like,
Right.
leave your rope and tape at home that you do for your construction site. Don't do things that just make women feel uncomfortable, even if the rope's not for them and it really is for construction work. Leave it at home. Just don't put it in the backseat of your car. Don't do dumb stuff. I mean, don't say, oh yeah, I'm still married, I'm still working on my divorce.
I mean, unless
Yeah,
you are still married, then maybe bring it up so that.
well, maybe don't go out. Maybe don't
Exactly.
date.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that there's times where, like, I remember there was another guy that this was several years ago, where he was going through a bitter divorce. They all are, I think, in some ways. Like, when no divorce is super friendly, typically. But anyway, he wanted to go out, and I was like, "You're not divorced yet." And he was like, "No, I'm totally ready to go out." I'm like, "Maybe after your divorce." And so when we went out, and I almost like wanted to just like give him a PowerPoint presentation of like, welcome to your divorce. You're not ready for a relationship. I don't care what you say. Why don't you take a year for yourself? Obviously, your children have some real emotional problems. I'm just saying that, and I've only looked at their picture. They need time with their dad. So you need to just really focus there. And
That's a big red flag. That's
yeah.
a big red flag on both sides of the sexes. If somebody says, I just got married, I just got divorced yesterday, here's the paperwork to prove it, and I'm ready to go date. I'm like, no, you're not. You're on the rebound. Like, I am not your rebound dude, or you should not be the rebound girl. Like, you need to go and figure out how to be single for a little while, then come back to the dating world when you're normal. Because right now you're like frazzled and you're divorced and you're lonely and you don't want to be alone. And yeah, that's not a good mindset to get into a relationship.
Don't you think that depends on, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate with this because I was separated for 2 years before my divorce. So by the time I got to my divorce, I was like,
well, you were separated. Like, you mentally
right.
did the 2 years. I'm talking about somebody who's like just got a divorce and it was rocky, and now they're ready to go jump in another relationship. It's like, dude, you need to chill for a little.
And I think there's going to be exceptions to every rule. And I think that that's where, again, like, you just have to listen to what's right for you. So like for Celeste, if she was like, you know what, this is where I am in my dating and my relationships, I'm ready to do this. I think that you just really have to be true to yourself, and at the same time respectful of other people. If they're just like, if someone's like, no, I'm not okay dating somebody who's still married, then that's, for them, that's what matters, or that's how they operate, so to speak. But to me, what's more telling is how respectful someone is when I say what my boundaries are. So like the fact, like, for example, years ago when I was on this date and the guy is telling me on the date that he's still married, had he approached it with, when I'm saying like, hey, you know what, once your divorce is finalized, if you want to go out again, okay, but this is information I wish you had shared with me before we went out, he could have handled it in a respectful way and been like, okay, yeah, it's totally great, what have you. But he made it into more of an issue than it needed to be because he didn't respect my boundaries. So what was a bigger red flag for me was his lack of respect for boundaries than the fact that he was still married.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like people jump in, and there's a lot of this because we've heard this, I mean, countless times, right? People who go out on a date and then they find out that they're still married and, well, no, but we're getting divorced, right? We're in the middle of that divorce. I feel like there is a kind of something within people that they're like, okay, I'm in pain right now because I'm going through this divorce. Now, some people, obviously, this is a generalization, Celeste's situation, she was ready, right? She had a long separation, et cetera, et cetera. But how many times have we seen people who come on here, they're going through a painful divorce, and it's like they just want to fill that void. They want to like go out and date right away and just jump right into something else. I feel like that's, even if that was acceptable, it's just a recipe for disaster. Like, take a little time, figure out what went wrong.
Well, they're hanging on to one relationship, but they want to grasp onto a new one before they let go of the other one. It's like, dude, that is a huge red flag. Like, you can't be alone. You cannot be alone. And I don't want to be with somebody who can't be alone, like who cannot survive on their own. They need me to be there all the time, like coddling them. It just means they have codependency issues. There's a lot of issues with just that. I mean, that's dangerous.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the best analogies that I heard of something like this is there was some example like in life, like where if you were to go through like a really secure building and the first doors open up and you walk in and the doors close behind you before the next set of doors open up to walk into the secure building. And I think of relationships in that way. Sometimes in order to move on to the next thing in life or the next phase in life, you've got to have that period where you are in that zone where the doors behind you have closed. That relationship or that experience, that job is closed. It's closed. It's not going to open again. I'm not looking back like Lot's wife. And then I'm moving forward when the next set of doors open. And yeah, or someone wrote like an airlock. I'm like, yeah, like an airlock. But just to have that kind of concept with just like, there's always going to, I know people that are exceptions to these rules, that they got married right away after the divorce and they're happy in. But at the same time, I feel like with relationships, whether you're male or female, just as a human being, your heart takes time to heal. You know your heart and mind, and you also know if someone's going to be respectful or not respectful of where you are in life. And to me, again, it comes down to, it's not so much that there is an issue, but how the issue is addressed and how it's resolved that's more important.
Yeah, I had my therapist when I was getting my divorce from an absolute difficult marriage. She said that generally speaking, it's like 1 month for every year you were married. So if you're, and Celeste had that. Celeste was separated for 2 years. She was married for 24. So do the math, right? She was pretty much separated for 24 months, right? I was 22 years. So, don't date for 22 months, right? So it's just something like that. She just recommended that as an opportunity to kind of work on yourself, do therapy, take a class, go hiking, pick up a new hobby, do something that doesn't require a relationship. It doesn't require a person holding your hand. Just get out there and figure out who you are for a little while and then come back to the dating world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a good friend whose divorce took 6 or 7 years. I mean, they just kept going on and on and on. And I'd always ask him, like, are you guys finally done yet? He's like, no, yeah. We're going to meet with the attorneys. I think we finally got everything figured out now. And then either he would change something or she would change something in the paperwork and it would all fall apart and like go back to step one. It was just a nightmare for them. And so I would imagine, and he's not, well, okay, he's technically LDS, but not LDS, if you know what I mean on that. So for him, he was out dating and doing all kinds of things. I can't imagine 6 years, but I've always felt like at the very least, if I'm going to find that right person, if I want Heavenly Father's blessing behind this, I got to do it the right way, right? Like if I try and cut corners, I can't expect for those blessings to be there the way I want them to be. And just say, well, I'm going to kind of do it my way. It's like, well, all right, I guess hopefully we'll get the blessings that we are hoping for. But, if you do not what I say, you have no promise, right? So anyways, well, I want to
the question was in the audience. So why did both? So you were engaged twice, right? So the first one, that was not the guy in prison, right?
Jail. He was in jail. Things happen.
Yeah.
So you weren't one of those like romance like letters while he was in jail. That's good to know.
And some of those guys look good in their jumpsuits, I'm sure. So, hey,
they're working out every day, right?
That's true. That's true.
Hey, there's a segment of the population who like kind of finds that thing hot, right? Like, not my thing, but whatever, I guess. So,
Love After Lockup. There's like a whole like reality show about that.
Stop. Are you serious? That's awesome.
I don't watch it. I do watch reality shows, but that one I do not watch.
I love reality. I haven't seen that one though.
I'm
So
just
Sarah,
desensitized.
I want to circle back a little bit to kind of your career. And I mean, there's a whole lot that plays into moving from your career into a dating life and kind of trying to balance those and trying to find that right person. Tell me a little bit about like, I mean, I loved Cokeville Miracle. That was honestly like, it was interesting because coming up on this podcast, I didn't know like that you were in that movie until Celeste is like, hey, here's Sarah's bio and this is what's going on. And I'm like, I love that show. And I'm kind of sappy when it comes to church movies or something based around like, you know, something that happened spiritually. I love that kind of thing. So I thought it was fantastic. I just want to say kudos to you on that. But how is it? This is what I'm really curious. How is it when you're going through, you're in like either a church production or some sort of like a T.C. Christensen film or something like that. And you're like probably like in the LDS church dogma of everything. And they're just like, wait, what? You haven't been married? Is there like added pressure that they start putting on you in those situations? Are they like coming down on you a little bit, like teasing you, or like how does that all play out?
Um, I think it varies. Like sometimes it comes up. I guess I feel like in film people, there's Michael J. Fox wrote in his book, his first autobiography, where his theater teacher would say something to the effect of, "We are all here because we're not all there." And I feel like on film, we're not all there. And so there's a lot of people have a checkered past and they're all kind of like, you know, we're just glad you showed up today. This is going to work. It'll be fine. So
I just showed up sober.
I know.
yeah, it's great. It's so good. And but I mean, oftentimes, like for example, like with a film like The Cokeville Miracle or Singing with Angels, they're not actually church films, but they have church themes. They are very faith-based. And so in a lot of ways, I'm glad that that makes it accessible to people of many different faiths, or people that maybe they're not like their spiritual practice is not going to be ever a part of any organized religion, but there's still themes that are in those movies that they can relate to and that they find helpful or inspiring in some level. And
I love the Christian movies.
yeah, and I think
love the God's Not Dead was a good series. I love that one. Did you ever see that?
I didn't. There's a lot out there to watch. Yeah, but I
It's a
think
good
that
series.
yeah, and I think that we don't really own the market. If you're a Christian, you don't own the whole market on being a person of faith or hope. There's so many people on the planet that have faith and hope and that find it important to support that kind of storytelling. And in terms of like of what my personal life is in terms of dating, I think it's I don't feel like, generally speaking, on set it's ever been an issue or really come up. Maybe it's like sometimes like with like in a production office or in other settings, and it might come up, but most and I think I guess like what's weird is that sometimes there's a question of like, oh, you don't have any children, like that's kind of weird, and you haven't been married yet, that's kind of weird. And you know, there's a little bit of that, but I think it's mostly in the film world. I feel that people are supportive of each other, ideally as being storytellers, as being creative people, and knowing that we all don't really fit in very well with the rest of society on some level because we're kind of creative artsy type. But I think sometimes it comes more around like some friends or at work, in the workplace, where then it becomes more of a question, or like, hey, I can ask you these personal questions, or there's sort of this somewhat like a patronizing, like, oh, let me show you how empathetic and, you know, how much I feel sorry for you that you don't have blah 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 in your life, or you haven't accomplished like this or that. I don't know how to say it, but I don't know if you guys have ever gotten that look of like, oh, you're divorced.
Oh yeah,
all
I've
the
never
time.
had that like 5
Well,
times.
Yeah,
I get the No, I get you're divorced and you're a dude, so you must
What
have
did
been
you
the
do?
bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do, Corey?
Exactly. Like, oh yeah, you cheated on your wife, didn't you? Or you are a porn
Yeah.
freak, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like
I
the
usually get,
girls get pandered and they get coddled and taken care
yeah, they're
of,
like, oh, this
you
poor
know.
sister, she got divorced because she was married to a douchebag. And then I show up, hey, I'm a guy and I'm divorced. And the church are like, oh, yeah, you're that guy.
You're one of those guys.
I think there is kind of that stigma, or there definitely can be. But, you know, I kind of always figured, I mean, this is my ignorance speaking here, but like, I know T.C. Christensen is not necessarily a church per se film, right? But he always sort of does church films like 17 Miracles and Ephraim's Rescue. Cokeville Miracle is kind of one of his, you know, that I'm sure probably most of the cast was LDS. I'm assuming, is that right?
I think most, not everybody. I want to say most people were members of the church.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. So, I mean, in my mind's eye, I always just sort of pictured kind of like this. Everybody's like kind of got the family Utah thing going on. And then, you know, if you were like a single person being on set, that they'd be like, wait, what? Why aren't you married? Like, where's your like minivan and like 9 million kids and all that sort of thing?
You know, the only time I think that this has really come up as an issue, like, and I'm going to make a lot of assumptions with this, is that I remember I auditioned for a Christmas film and I was really excited about the part, and they cast a husband-wife duo as the lead couple. And I was like, this is not fair. I can't, like, I mean, because I really wanted this cute, like, you know, it was a Christmas film and she was like a goofy wife and blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was such a fun role. And at the same time, I'm like, well, if they've already decided on this is our leading man and his wife, you know, she's an actress, then she's going to have like kind of precedence to be cast in this. Or there was another time where there was a part where I'm like, oh, I like this part. It's a mom, she has a daughter, blah, blah, blah. And they ended up casting a mom and daughter duo because of the chemistry that you're going to have when people are when people really are married, when it's really a mother-daughter duo, then there's going to be some natural chemistry that you'll see on screen that you wouldn't otherwise. So that, and I don't think that that's discrimination so much as it's kind of like the luck of the draw and just how things go. And but I think I feel like TC in particular, he's just always been very gracious and very nice in a lot of ways. But I think that he's also someone that he's kind of got like this whole database of information or something like working in the background. And so he's very deliberate about what kind of projects that he's working on and the story that he wants to tell. And I think that he also has a great deal of maybe like, that like his intention is definitely that there's ways that his film or his gift of storytelling is going to be used, that it is going to be used in a way in the world where it's going to help increase the faith of others, and to tell as much as he can, to tell good stories truthfully, to tell them to, based on the facts and what you know about it and having done his research.
So do you have an in on his next movie? Are you kind of like,
Oh, I don't. I wish I did. Like, I haven't talked to him or messaged with him recently, but sometimes like I bug him about things. So, but even then, like he's still just, I think, and it's hard I feel like as an actor, it's hard not to take that personally when there's different directors. I know like Brian Bruff from Singing with Angels or John Lyde with Miracle Maker, where these are great guys, but there's still, and I think that we get along fine. I felt like we worked together well on set, but I don't feel like I get preferential treatment over anyone else. Like if they're doing a film, they're going to throw it out there to me and to everyone equally. We all have like an equal shot to audition and to compete for it. And if I mess up an audition, I'm probably not going to get it.
so is there a different kind of auditioning process then that might go through? Like, do they look for more church kind of actors, people who have a sort of an exposure to the LDS church and or culture?
I don't get a sense of that either. I feel like most of the time they're looking for who do they like to work with. And I think that this could be on a larger scale with, the big films they'll say like that will associate with Hollywood, and even on a smaller scale in films that are made in Utah or by Utah filmmakers that happen to have some kind of faith-based theme. They still are looking for some of like their core people that they know that they like to work with. And so by that token, there are times where I'm invited back to work on a film, and maybe they don't have a lead role for me, but they just know like, oh, you know what, Sarah, like we just need someone to come in for a day, do this scene. Are you available? So occasionally that will happen. But I don't know. I think that because a lot of times, like when you're working on a film, like there's one, you want to make sure that the people that you have in their respective capacities are talented, and that everyone can get along and rely on each other, because there's a lot of long hours and long days that people are putting in, and everybody's got to hold their own weight.
Gotcha. So then where does that kind of leave your hopes and ambitions? By the way, before you answer that, sorry, I want to kind of just throw in a little caveat. You do have an audition tape for us that you had mentioned you'd like to play, right?
Oh, it's this is my demo reel, not necessarily an audition tape, but yeah, on this one, because I thought there's like, it's just more to give perspective, because sometimes like I babysat for a family that growing up, and I remember when they watched the Cokeville Miracle at the end, the wife Jane, she was saying to her husband Mike, like, oh yeah, Sarah did a good job in that film. And Mike was like, she was in the movie? She's like, yeah, she was in the movie. She got second billing. Like, she's in the movie. He's like, oh, how about that? Like, so sometimes like, I think it's good to just see like, oh, this is what she's done, because there may be things that people haven't quite placed, like, oh, this person in that film or what have you.
All right, cool. We're
Gotcha.
excited to see it.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Do you know how to play it, or do we need to play it off of our end? I think
I sent it to you.
It's on YouTube, and I don't have screen sharing.
Okay,
I sent it
so
to you in your messenger, Everett.
okay, I'll go ahead and pull it up here in a second. And apparently it's been okay. So
while he's pulling that,
just to give everyone a fair warning on this, YouTube does have kind of a sense of wanting to blacklist us or like kind of cut things out. So it may be that they copyright tag this one and we have to slice this section out. So if you're watching this later and that demo reel is not there, we'll probably put the link or something in the comments, just so YouTube doesn't like take it down. So just forewarning on that.
It hasn't been censored on me yet.
hey, so she gave her verbal consent. So if YouTube is watching our video, they'll see that she gave her verbal consent to play it. So
verbal consent to play. Yes.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to do a little screen share here.
Okay. And this demo reel, like as actors, that's one of the tools that we're constantly working. So I have what it looks like now, and I'm hoping my goal is in the next couple of weeks to update it yet again with more footage. And the dream is that you would watch it, that if somebody like is a casting director or director or producer, what have you, and they saw this, even if they watched only like 30 seconds, maybe a minute of the 2 minutes that we have, that they would get a sense of right away whether or not they want to work with me, if they want to cast me. And so that's the purpose of having this up to date and being able to share it, and something that like for my agent to be able to show on the website as well. So sometimes there's like some commercials or like I guess they're like, instructional kind of videos that I booked just because somebody has watched this through my agent and they're like, oh yeah, okay, she can read a teleprompter. We'll use her.
Okay,
cool.
So it looks
Awesome.
like this is 2 minutes long. So we'll go ahead and share this just real quick. Let it roll.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, are we able to see that okay? Before I hit play?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I don't think intimidation is the best way to work with a partner in this situation.
Oh no. No.
Just put on your streaming face and work your charm. And remember, you're trying to redeem yourself to keep your job. The board saw her video and they want to fire you. Make a deal with her.
Tu madre?
I ran away from her after I got pregnant. No wonder Sam hates me.
Hey, How did it go?
Oh, it went great.
Don't interrogate him like he's a suspect.
You all ready for your test?
Yep, for sure.
Oh, good. So you know all about Wyoming. Okay, what is the capital of Wyoming?
Easy. It's W.
I think so. The life insurance should get us through. A friend suggested that I get a job just for something to do, something else to focus on.
You're talking and it just sounds like a taco truck order.
This would be so much easier if you just spoke English. You know, we're not south of the border.
Ooh, that reminds me. I gotta get my tacos.
Save one for me.
Okay.
I like that ending. That was awesome. You go, girl. Girl
Got some
power.
fight scenes in there.
Love
Yeah, I like the fight scene.
it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I made a demo way back in the day trying to get into acting, and but then it got leaked and it was dubbed Star Wars Kids. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Oh no, I haven't.
Oh
No,
my
he's
gosh.
full of crap. That's not
I'm like,
his MO.
what?
He's Star Wars Kid was like something that somebody caught on film, and like everybody blasted him online and made fun of him.
Did you ever see that video?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's an old one. So it's way back. It goes way back in time. But yeah, some kid, he filmed himself in the garage with like a broomstick, and he was doing like ninja stuff, and he was he's kind of goofy, nerdy, and and then his friends found the tape, and then it like got leaked on the internet.
Was that was you?
No.
Oh,
Corey's
No.
just being
I
facetious.
think
That
he's
was
trying.
like 20 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, it's when I
Yeah.
No,
20
but it's
years
funny
ago.
because it looks like he was demoing for a movie, because he had a black curtain in the background, and yeah, it was pretty funny. But
So-
yours is way better, like tons better. So
Yeah. So here's I've always seen, I forget the other guy's name, Jason something or other.
Jason Wade.
Yes, from Cokeville, right? He was your husband in the movie, right? So he's been in several of TC Christensen movies. So that's why I'm kind of thinking like, okay, you guys got to all somehow sort of run in the same circles, right? Like he doesn't call on you again, say, hey, I know you did Cokeville, but I got this new project I'm working on. Like, this is where we're going with it.
No, that's what I would hope, because like as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm such a contradiction, because I know like Jason and TC have that kind of relationship where TC just loves working with Jason Wade. And if, for somebody that's familiar with it, so he was in watching the demo reel, you see him and he's kind of like the Mormon Brad Pitt, he's a great, talented actor. He's cool to work with, all those things. But I feel like with, I don't feel like for me it's, and maybe I'm not noticing it or something. I don't know. But for me, I feel like I still have to just sweat it out and work just as hard or harder than anyone else to book the next role. And I don't know. And again, I'm not trying to make this into a gender issue, but there is a difference being a female, being my age versus being a male. They're still going to, like Jason and I, we were in the same like singles ward scene in Los Angeles. So we have like kind of an extensive network of friends where we all knew each other. We'd hang out. And I remember when, before he got married, just like we would talk and message sometimes about just the struggles of being an actor and wanting to still go to church and to have faith in God, to have faith in Jesus Christ. And how do you do that? And he has a really interesting journey that he took, and it was it's been neat to see, I think, his faith and putting his family first, and then still continuing to act, how that's paid off for him. And he's, he's just like a cool guy to have around, and he's really good, and he's effortless with what he does. To me, like when I see him working on scene, on set, so to speak, because I feel like I'm the one that, like, not only do I teach class, but I usually am taking at least 2 to 5 hours of an acting class myself a week. So that means that I'm in acting class anywhere from 2 to 7 hours every week. And I'm working on it. And if I'm on set and I'm going to be in a scene soon, I try to kind of be off by myself, like just make sure I've had some time to be by myself and to focus. Or if I'm going into audition, I like to just take me time. Then I'm kind of like shutting out everyone else to just focus, get in the zone. And other people, I think they're just like, oh, like, here I am. And then they open their mouth and it's amazing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not like that.
So do you end up having to do like multiple takes or something like that? Like, gosh, I'm not feeling this one yet. Like, let's try it again. If I'm frustrated with you, like, okay, come on, like we gotta roll.
If I take the time to prepare, then we're good. We can move along pretty fast. But if I'm not taking the time to prepare, then it's just like a painful experience.
See, I kind of just, for some reason, like, I thought that you guys were all like this kind of tight knit little like group, you see the same guy, for example, who's in like some of the temple videos. He's in like a ton of the church videos. I don't know his name, but I think he's actually been in a couple. He's a little bit older. I think he played like Joseph Smith's father or something like that.
He's been in the Bible videos too.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I don't know his name. I apologize on that. But so I'm kind of thinking like, okay, this guy, and then you see like, I know Kirby Hayborn because he makes fun of his name and the RM. So like that guy and a couple of those guys were like even transitioned over into the newer temple videos. And I'm thinking, okay, these guys got to all be like this little kind of tight knit, like maybe it's a BYU sort of like acting production group or something, right? Like I kind of thought that's where most of this germinated from, but it sounds like that's not really the case, that they just kind of go through normal channels.
Yeah, no, well, I think it depends. I guess it's fair to say maybe it depends on the director, the producer, how much money they have in the project, because there's some people that like I am working with them again and again, but at the same time, I still feel like if I don't hold my own, like I'm not going to get booked again. And or if there just simply isn't a part for me, like they're like, well, we want a younger female for this. We want somebody who is Black or who looks more Asian than you. Then, there's only so much they can do. And I do notice that there are some of those guys that are working again and again, or they're like their own group, like like Jason, Sharon, and I want to say it's Corbin, I think is the other one that you're talking about, where they've recently put together some kind of online acting course. And so it's cool to see them, and I know those guys, but I wouldn't say that I feel like I'm on their inner circle. But then like if we happen to be together on set or an audition, it's always fun. We're always going to have, a good time. But I personally just don't feel like I have the inside track on any of that. And I don't know, maybe I could speculate all day, but that's kind of like the insecure side of me is like, maybe they really hate me. And it's like someone wrote here, well, it sounds like dating. I'm like, yeah, sometimes it feels like dating where you're like, maybe this director really hates me, or maybe I stink and nobody's telling me. And I don't know, they feel sorry for me. And that's why I got a part. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know. I can't comment too much on that. I haven't been down that road as far as like the whole acting and everybody's, you've kind of got the buddies going on in that. But I would just imagine that it's got to at least lend some credibility as far as like, hey, I've had these before. TC, like, hey, man, come on, I want to be in your next one.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like it should lend some credibility, but I remember there was an audition, and when I went in, so it was that movie Trek on that one. And again, not to throw anyone but myself under the bus. When I went in on that audition, I didn't feel like I wasn't focused. I was rushed. And I was, as an actor, I came into it with like, this is how I see this scene playing out. And then when the director for it said, you know, actually what we want to see is this, I couldn't make an adjustment. And it was painful because I could just like hear myself, like an outer body experience almost of like, oh my goodness, like I am stuck in how this is saying. I'm not making the adjustments. I'm not taking the direction. And I haven't prepared properly for this. And I don't know what to do because now I'm in the audition room and all I can see is the director just looking at me kind of like, okay. And it was like this shift of energy in the room where I could feel he went from, it's so great to see you, Sarah, to like, all right, well, have a nice day. Okay.
Oh,
Good
so
effort.
I know you like to use your experiences on set and with filming to like share life lessons. Is that kind of like, does that be an experience where you could use that as a life lesson learner? I know you like to teach people those.
Yeah, I think I feel like there is, because I've learned a lot. I study, I've off and on. Right now I'm more back on with studying the Meisner technique with a teacher Iris Klein, that I worked with in Los Angeles. And so she has now, because of the pandemic, she's also teaching through Zoom. So it's been wonderful to be able to reconnect with her. And so there's a lot that I've learned about what the importance of being present in, you know, from one moment to the next. And that's something that is absolutely essential with acting. And I think it's also essential in life to just be present with what's happening right now and to be present right now with people and to really listen. There's, to me, I think one of the first times that I felt like a significant life lesson, I was working on a reality show on TLC. This was when I still lived in Los Angeles. Diagnosis X, I almost forgot. And I remember I was so nervous about it. And I felt overwhelmed when they handed the script for that week. And I was a mom that had a daughter that we thought she was doing drugs or something like that. And when I saw the script, I was so nervous and overwhelmed. And then I started to realize, like, okay, all you have to worry about are your scenes, Sarah. Like, let's just look at your scenes. You're not on every page, you're only in these scenes. And then even within those scenes, there's just a few lines here and there. And before we film, we're going to rehearse it. The director is going to walk through things, you know, they want to make sure they've got the lighting right. They're going to talk through it, make adjustments. And then once that we've rehearsed it and they're like, okay, we know what we're going to do, then they'll tell the actors to, you know, kind of take a break, take 5. They make sure all the lights are where they need to be, things are adjusted, then they bring you in. And then once I'm doing we're doing the scene, we're going to have several takes where we're doing it from this angle, from that angle. If I miss a beat, we're going to pick up the shot. If someone else misses a beat, they're going to pick it up from there. So I feel like applying that to a life lesson, it seems for me with life, it feels like, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to live a good life and to be like Jesus, who's this perfected being, and then return to live with Heavenly Father. Like, this seems impossible. But then if, you know, it's broken down to, okay, you know what, there's scriptures, there's a lot of, you know, good people who have lived before that have led good examples. And just, you know, for right now, just take it one day at a time, or take it, you know, one moment at a time. And what do you need right now? Like, what would be the right thing for right now to do? And just, you know, take it step by step and to be guided in life. And I think whether you believe in God or a higher power, I believe everyone has that in them to be able to receive guidance for just what's the next right move.
Love it. It's great. I love how you can turn your experiences into life lessons, because it seems like with that type of a career, you probably have a lot of different opportunities to experience things that most of us don't. And so I think it's great that you choose. Do you actually teach? Like, I know you motivational teach, right? Do you bring up those life lessons during those teaching moments?
Yeah, well, I've done some. I'd like to be honest. Let's see, wait, one moment. I'm going to adjust this light really quickly. I've done some motivational speaking. I have to be painfully honest at all times. But I try to incorporate as much as I can, like what I've feel like the things that I've learned in life, or that I've learned from acting or from humanitarian trips, and to apply it into whatever setting I'm in. But I think it seems like it comes up just, yeah, there's a lot of different random ones that will come up at different times. I guess like one, for example, is that I think is important as actors to know. Let's say like I'm looking at a script and I can see, obviously I'm the antagonist, I'm the villain in the script. So, and this is something that I've learned, is that I'm not going to approach the villain as the villain. I'm not going to look at this character and be like, oh, okay, I'm playing Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians, so I'm evil and I'm blah, blah, blah. You always approach it as you're justified. Every person is the hero of their own story. And so if I am out to kill the 101 Dalmatians, we'll say just as a random example, then I'm going to be justified in what it is that I'm doing. And I think, like, or even let's say like Charlie Chaplin, when he played Hitler, there's going to be this air of justification, even though he's playing someone that has been epitomized as one of the most evil men throughout history. And I think from a spiritual standpoint is just to recognize and to keep ourselves in check, where it's like, and that's why it's important to have a repentant and a humble attitude, is because there may be things that I've done that are wrong, but I'll feel like, well, no, I'm justified in lying. I'm justified in cheating this, or I'm justified in just telling a little half truth in this example because of whatever the reasons are. But just to, I guess, like, I'm hoping I'm conveying this right, is just to be honest with oneself about, am I justifying doing a little bit of evil here, when really, like, the truth is, like, I'm not in the right. I'm making excuses for myself rather than being honest and authentic with what I need to do.
So have you ever kind of gotten to the point where you're like, look, I mean, you've said a couple times, you feel like you're getting too old, Hollywood wants somebody younger and all of those sort of things for these roles. Have you ever thought about transitioning over into the director's role? I mean, being that person that instead of you're nervous to meet the director, people are nervous to meet you?
Yeah, like, I think I've definitely like wanted to do something like that. So recently we did with some of my friends, Savannah Osler and Steve Diallo, she wrote, directed, and produced Twice the Dream, and then most recently we did Even in Dreams. So there's been a few times, like on the first film, that I stepped into like as like a first AD, like an assistant director or a director, when she was actually in the scene. And so there's been some things that I thought were really fun from that. I definitely feel like there's some satisfaction that I guess I would say, like, if I could do a director type of a role, or contribute as a writer, just to have that, I just think of it as like creative input and control in a project. That would be really awesome, because I know I've got my ideas and things that I want to see on film that I really want to pursue. So I guess the short answer is, yeah, that would be cool.
You can direct my Porter Rockwell, John Wick kind of movie idea that I have. How's that?
I see there's possibility. I've got it in my mind. I'm like, okay, I see it.
It all comes from Porter Rockwell, but it's this whole new like John Wick style of like fighting and defending and fighting.
I could see that one making hundreds at the box office. Just fantastic.
Oh yeah, hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
You know what I'd love to see though? The movies that I loved, the old kind of, you've seen like, why did I draw a blank? The Singles Ward and the RM, the old Hailstorm Entertainment guys. Do you remember that? Kurt Hale and somebody else. Seriously, like, I feel like everyone kind of moved along with that, and they need to do like a mid-singles ward. Like, they need to do another one of those. So there's my little plug for that. Please do it, like somebody. That would be great, because I love those movies. But even though they're total cheese, I love them.
No, that would be so good. I've seen, like, so it is kind of different to be doing the podcast and to see a chat box where I just see that someone mentioned like how honest and authentic, how is it honest and authentic if it's acting? So I want to like just to speak to that briefly, because I feel like as somebody that I consider myself to be an artist and a storyteller, And I'm passionate about giving voice to things, to things, ideas, situations, to people that may not have a voice. And again, it comes from a Meisner technique, or a Meisner approach based type of philosophy with acting, is that it's about being truthful in the moment, because there's oh man, I thought I had it, but there's something to be said when you are any person watching a film or a TV show. There's going to be times where it just doesn't resonate. You're just like, I'm not believing this person is who they say they are. And there's other times that you're watching a film or a TV show, and right away you're like, oh, okay, I believe they are who they say they are. And that's one of those things, like Tom Hanks, for example. He's and I don't know if he's the best example to give, but he's somebody that almost everybody universally, they believe him, they trust him.
Mhm.
And when it comes to acting and coming from that, like what it means to come from a truthful and authentic place, or a space, like even just recently it came up in one of my classes where somebody was like in tears, just saying, I'm so happy and grateful to be with you. This is just amazing. Like, I'm so happy and grateful to be with you. And it was so heartfelt, and there was that emotion. And our teacher just pointed out, she said, now, if you just saw, I'm so happy and grateful to be with you on a script, it might come out like, I'm so happy and grateful to be with you. Right. But that's not authentic or true to the moment, because what's true to the moment and what's happening between these two characters is this profound sense of like, this is meaningful for us to be together. This is special. And so the way that you would approach that, if you saw this in a script, is like with that kind of respect for what is honest and true to what's happening right now. And right now, like, this is really touching them on like a soul level, that they're happy and grateful to be together. And I think that when an actor or a storyteller approaches that kind of sensitivity to whatever medium it is, then it's instinctive in each of us as humans to know whether or not they're just telling like BSing their way through it, for lack of a better word, or if they're being truthful, they're being honest and authentic with like, this is real. So like, for example, in films where I have a crying scene, being honest and authentic in a scene where I'm crying, is I'm finding somewhere in me that empathy, or that experience that I have that relates to what's being portrayed in film. So it's coming from somewhere honest and true within me. Otherwise, like, you would be able to tell, and you'd be like, yeah, I'm not believing it.
I remember watching something on, have you ever seen that movie Monster with Charlize Theron, where she kind of played the Eileen Wuornos character, the serial killer, in real life?
No, it's too scary. I didn't watch it.
So I remember like watching something about like, there was a scene that they had to film, and afterwards she just broke down crying, and she said basically like, it was just like she was in that moment, like she was that character, and it was so emotionally overpowering to her that she's just like, it took everything out of me. It was crazy. So I think there's a point where, and I'm not familiar with the technique that you keep mentioning. So maybe you could explain that to us in a second. But I think for the good actors, essentially what you're saying is you have to be able to become that role. You have to become that person. Is that fair to say?
I feel like the way that I would word it is to have empathy, to have true empathy for what that person is going through. And I think that having different life experiences for me, where there's things that have been challenging and heartache and disappointment, if I'm drawing on that and bringing that to a character or to a scene, then I feel like the person that's watching the film on the other end, they're going to be able to sense like either they believe me and they relate to it, or they don't. And it's kind of like it's you just know, like, I believe them or I don't believe them. But to me, I feel like it really comes down to just being able to, it's similar to what you're saying, but I feel like it's that empathy of like, okay, even though I haven't like lost a spouse in a car accident, I can imagine and think of, if I were in this imaginary situation, then how would I truthfully respond as me? Not trying to be Corey or Celeste and like try to make something up, but just to really get down to who I am at my core and how do I approach that, this like bringing life, bringing voice to it from my perspective. And I feel like that's where actors like eating or anybody can get into trouble if I'm trying to compete with or recreate what I think. And I'm going to pick on Celeste just for fun, but if I'm trying to recreate, like, I think this is what Celeste would do, and this is how she would pose right here, and I think that if she were to cry at this moment, then she might just approach it like this, then I feel like right away you're gonna be like, wow, she's performing. That just, it's not resonating with me. But if I bring my voice truthfully to this character in this moment, and you can just feel like the sincerity of it, then you're like, all right, like, I'm with her, I buy it. Like, yeah.
Awesome. So is that the technique then that you're talking about? Is that kind of what that describes?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is more like just who you are in imaginary, like, you know, the magic if, like, if I were in this situation, who would I be? And for me, like, it's, I don't know all the words to use to be able to describe it other than it really taps into empathy. But the basis of Sanford Meisner is a technique where he calls it the repeat. And he was one that a lot of actors, like people that I'm just blanking on everybody's name, but anyway, once you like look at it, you're like, oh my goodness, all these different people have studied with him. So most recently, the one, and I'm blanking on this name again, the one that plays Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin.
Yep.
So he also studied with Iris's mother, Janet Alhanti, that studied, and they both studied with Sanford Meisner. So just to give you an idea of the level of some people, or like when I was studying in LA, I remember Michelle Rodriguez, who was in the Fast and Furious movies, was in the classes. And, you know, there's sometimes that you would see people in class who were like, oh yeah, I recognize you. But the basis of, or what at the heart of it is this exercise called the repeat, where you're just going back and forth. You start with one word, kind of like you smile, I smile, you smile, I smile. And the idea is it's an exercise that eventually it's going to build from there, but it's very much focused on almost like being observant of the micro expressions of the person that you're with, and just being able to address what is happening right now, and addressing behavior truthfully as it comes up in that moment. And then what happens is a lot of times our crap comes up, because you can run and you can hide, but when you really tune in to being present with another person, if there's something that I'm self-conscious of, like, and again, I'm going to pick on Celeste just for kicks and giggles, but if I'm looking at her and I'm so like insecure about myself, and I'm just like, oh, she thinks I'm fat and ugly, I just know it. She thinks I'm fat and ugly, and I'm smiling like just like this, then Celeste might think like, I don't know if Sarah has like some kind of problem. Like she's just going to be like, there's something going on. Like she really feels uncomfortable, but it's all happening here in me, and I'm projecting it onto Celeste. And so, and then conversely, I'll see Celeste like has got something going on in her mind, and I know it's because she thinks I'm fat and ugly, you know? And so that's, if I was doing that in a scene or as an actor, then like Corey and Everett, you know, as an audience member, you'd be like, this is just weird. It just doesn't feel like Sarah and Celeste are connecting in this scene. Like, I'm just not believing that Sarah's responding to what Celeste is giving her. So the whole exercise is based on just being truthful to what's happening right now. Because if I'm truthfully addressing what's happening right now with Celeste, I would just say like, oh, she likes me, we're good. And Celeste would be like, yeah, I like you, we're good.
I sure do.
That's all that's truthfully happening right now. And you would be able to see, like, even in that brief example, hopefully people will be like, yeah, like, I think Celeste likes her. I don't think she's thinking she's fat and ugly. I think she just thinks I like Sarah.
Definitely not.
Did you ever see the movie Tropic Thunder?
I love that movie.
Well, it's funny because all the actors are so trying to be in the moment and in the character. And Robert Downey Jr. was just hilarious. He was hilarious. He went, and then he was making fun of the other actor for going full retard. Do you remember that? Like, he's like, you never go full. And he's like, you got to go like Tom Hanks, like not quite all the way. But he says, you went too far. And they were like bantering. It was That was a great movie if you want to kind of see the whole like actor mentality of like,
oh my
you know,
goodness,
living it.
it's so inappropriate, but it's so like there's a lot to that movie that were just like some really fun moments. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
But and hopefully that's helpful, like what I'm sharing. And I know like once I start on a particular topic and I just rattle off and on, it might be like just like out of control. But for me, like with what I've learned from this, or even with the Meisner technique or other classes with studying comedy, improv, and just things that I've learned from even doing my open mic night opportunities I've had with stand-up, the thing that keeps coming back to is I feel like at our core as human beings, there's so much more that we have in common than what we don't. And if I'm being truthful right now with you guys, if I'm being who I am, then you're gonna feel like, okay, this is somebody I can talk to. And conversely, if I put that into a character, then you're like, oh, okay, I like watching her on screen. But if there's something in me that's presentational or that's performing or what have you, then you somewhere, even on a subconscious level, you're going to catch on and you're like, yeah, don't trust her with my checkbook.
Gotcha. So how does this, I mean, there was a question in the audience a little bit ago that I think was an interesting question. How does this kind of play into your dating life then? I mean, do you ever have people that are sort of like, there she is, like some sort of groupie that's like, oh man, Sarah, I saw you in Cokeville, like little stalker situation going on or something like that?
Oh, okay. Honestly, the one that's been the oddest is there's an older man that's in the area that is married, and he just likes to, like, he comes across pretty nice, but he liked the Cokeville Miracle, and he started coming to different Q&As, and then he would want to call or email me, and then and also like was singing with angels, and then he just kept on wanting to send me videos or DVDs or things that he had written. And I think that he came across nice at first, but then more and more I just felt like, this is weird. This is just getting weird. And I could see that he had a pattern where he just really would push himself, particularly on women that were in film, or that, or maybe like one girl I know of that she was in, what was it called? Like a beauty pageant kind of a thing. And just, I think that he just sort of preyed on wanting to be like, come across like he's a loving kind of an older father figure. But there was something about it that I just felt like, this is now getting too intrusive on my time. Like, I don't know what his agenda is, but there was just something about it where I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this persistence. And I told TC about it eventually, because he messaged me and he was like, oh, what are you thinking about? Like, it messaged me, somehow it came up, and I told him, I was like, dude, I don't want him to know where I am. I don't want him to have my address. I don't want him to have my phone number. Like, it's too much.
It's becoming a problem.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Ever be
Just married doing that.
What was that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Corey.
Oh no, I was gonna say, just on that same topic of, does it make you a little hesitant? Like, do you worry about the motives of a guy who might ask you out? Like a guy who might reach out to you and say, hey, saw you on the podcast, I saw you were single, and then you're like, oh, is this a stalker? Does that ever give you like any kind of worry? Like, or do you like casual meets? Like, hey, you met somebody on set, or you met somebody at church, or you met him in person?
I think there could be some concerns, but I feel like at this point in life, I mean, if there's, for me, like what I take, like, even though honestly, I work full time, I have a degree, there's a lot of things that I do outside of acting, but I'm passionate about acting, about film, and about the study of the craft of acting. And so that conversely, I feel like means, and I come from a family, like, again, like going back to Seaside, like I come from some deep roots in a lot of different varied areas. So I feel like means that I've honed in my skills as being a study of human behavior. And if I get any kind of a sense or a feeling that somebody is lying, if they're not truthful, that they're not who they say they are, if there's any kind of sense of that, I find a way, either consciously or subconsciously, it seems like I've found a way to just cut them off, not associate with them, or just, I just kind of have my guard up. So I feel like in that way, it really hasn't been that much of a problem. But if I get any kind of but then again, like if I feel anything about our interaction is like, they're not being truthful. There's something, I don't know what it is. They're lying. I don't know what they're lying about, but they're lying. Then I'm pretty guarded about it, or about that person, we'll say.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that, does that answer your question or address
Yeah,
it?
it does. I think it's just a matter of like, I mean, I guess it's hard on your part because you don't know what people's motivations are. I just don't know if that in your mind, you're like, why is this guy reaching out to me? Why is he asking me out? Like, is he a fanboy, or is he just asking me out because he doesn't know I'm an actress or something?
Well, and I think that most of the time, like, and this is where realistically, I'm pretty like super real about, like, I feel like as an actor, I'm upfront about what experience I have in film and what I've done. And at the same time, I get it. Like, I'm not Julia Roberts. I'm not, I haven't had like that kind of a career. And at my age, I don't know what the trajectory exactly looks like, but it's likely I'm not going to have a problem of somebody mistaking me with J-Lo, So I'm not that worried about it. But there's sometimes, like, even within the film industry, there's a few people where I feel like I get the sense that they have ulterior motives. And so I'm just more cautious about it. But at the same time, I don't know, for better or worse, I just try to be really realistic about, this is what my work experience is. This is, what I've done. And so in our film community here in Utah, to a degree, I feel like I have, substantial credits to go up against anyone that's on this, in this market. Some people have more, some people have less credits than I do, but I feel pretty comfortable and confident with what I have. But again, that's the Utah market, which is realistically a busy, medium-sized market. And there are people that have done a lot more than I have, and there's people that have done a lot less.
Okay, so Sarah, there are many people asking on the chat and privately to me for you to talk about your humanitarian service. So we know you're big on that, and we know when you go to like Belize and Columbia, is that right? With the HOPE, what is it called? HOPE Humanitarian Service?
HOPE Humanitarian, yeah. And I don't know if my friend Sarah, that her name is Sarah Franklin. Wait, yeah, Sarah Franklin. So I was like, wait a minute. But she started a few years ago HOPE Humanitarian, and I was with her when they first went on an organized trip to Belize in 2016. So I've gone to Belize 4 times with the group. And then in 2019, we went to Colombia to help Los Caminantes, the Venezuelan refugees that are on the border between Venezuela and Colombia. So for me, that's something that I think, again, in terms of like a work-life balance, or having, a spiritual kind of base in life, I really believe there's that element of being willing to serve other people as well as to receive service, and so like the willingness to be able to share and give love and to receive love. And so that's something that I've learned a lot of life lessons with going to those countries. And it's been like something that's fun. When we've gone to Belize, we've worked at King's Children's Home that's outside of the capital of Belmopan. And that's a home where you have a lot of children that they call it an orphanage, but a lot of the children technically still have parents. They're either been abused by their parents, or their parents were poor, not able to provide for them. And there's a few that are truly orphaned, where both of their parents have died or lost, so to speak. And so have learned a lot from being able to go there and to work with the people. Yeah, it's a different, and I think what's different about it is that going to Belize the first time, when I came back, I like kind of freaked out to one of my cousins over the phone about just what I saw, and the poverty and things that I just was not prepared for. And then seeing what the Venezuelan refugees are experiencing crossing the border between Venezuela and Colombia, that was like next level of like, oh my goodness. Like, I thought things that I saw in Belize people living with the dirt floor, some of them, and others of them just even being in the orphanage. There's so much that's, they're up against with that. And, but then when we were driving on the bus between the airport in Cucuta and then going to where we were on an army base in Pamplona and back, and along these windy roads and in the mountainous area in Colombia, and just seeing groups of people, sometimes with children, sometimes without. And if you could just imagine, the way I would picture is like if all of us right now, with exactly what we have on our body, and maybe if we're lucky, a knapsack, just started walking and walked as far as we could go until it was time to sleep in the woods at night, and hope those rodents of unusual size, which do exist, and they have signs, along the road, don't get us, then that's what a lot of people are experiencing. And a lot of them, they're for the Venezuelans, some of them are well educated that are still refugees, and some of them are just marginally, like with their education, they've had some education but not a ton. But most of them, I would say, they're used to living better than that. They're not used to sleeping on the side of the road. They're not used to being a refugee. They're not used to the conditions that they're experiencing. And that was super, super heart-wrenching. And it definitely, it puts so much into perspective when, here, I've never had to worry about having hot water to take a shower, knowing where I'm going to sleep at night, and that I have clean water to drink. Like, that's never been a worry for me. And that puts me so far ahead of so many other people, which is, again, I think gives the responsibility to take time to serve and to give to others.
Right. So at the very beginning, you said, this is how I understood it, so correct me if I'm wrong. So you're saying that your humanitarian service kind of helps you balance the religious part of your life with like your careers? Is that what you're saying? So you choose to go on humanitarian trips to help serve and become like Christ, to help balance being away and having to do your career? Is that what you were meaning by that? Or
I think maybe that's one way to put it. I'm sorry, I guess I'm not really sure what I would say, other than I feel like humanitarian trips have been a great antidepressant for me, because it's just been, it's given me so much joy to be able to have those opportunities. And like, and I think I got a little bit lost in my own words, but there's the times that I've been able to spend with the kids that are at King's Children Home outside of, in Belize, outside of Belmopan. Then I've brought a DVD that we're going to watch of a film I'm in, and they're so cute. When we were watching the Cokeville Miracle, for example, there was one little boy, he kept on saying, "Oh, Miss Sarah, that you?" Because they're in the Caribbean. I'm like, yeah, that me, that me. And they're like, "Oh, you're married in this." I'm like, we're in a film, and that's a prop. The ring is a prop. And then when they were watching it, it was they're so fun, like just their innocence that they're watching the movie. And when there's a moment where the bomb goes off, and like how they handled it, and they were so worried about the kids. And what I thought was amazing to me is there's the children in the Cokeville Miracle. There's a part where they're all praying because there's of the hostage situation, and to think of like the empathy and the humanity that the children had that were living in this orphanage, where they have practically nothing, and they have so much love and compassion, and they understood what it meant to pray and to want God to hear your prayers, and how much that affected them. And then my other hope is that by them watching a film like that and being able to more, like, I think the downside of film in general, and film particularly in Utah, is that there's a lack of representation of other races in film. And I think it's so important to be able to see yourself in film, to see your story represented, which again, like for women, I think there's a lack of representation. For women that are my age, there's a lack of representation, but there's particularly a painful lack of representation of people that are not white in film. And at least for the children, when they were watching a movie like the Cokeville Miracle, that they could see like, okay, Miss Sarah is here, like, and that's how they would call me, like, oh, Miss Sarah's here, and she's with us, and we see her on the film. And then somehow to start to bridge that gap where they could see like, okay, there's other possibilities for me ahead in my life. Like if she can do this, then so can I. If she can tell stories through film, so can I. And so it's not just the faith that's talked about in the films, but also the fact that I want the children to be able to identify with people that have goals, have dreams, and are working towards them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I know we're about to open up to the audience. Yeah.
You can definitely tell that you have a strong passion for this, Sarah. I mean, your emotions kind of seem to bubble to the surface pretty easily when you're talking about these things. That's commendable. I think that shows that you truly have heart behind it. So
yeah, well, I can cry easily on cue.
Okay, let's not do the acting crying though, but let's, the truth behind it is that these are serious subjects, and it's something that you've really you've kind of thrown yourself into, to try and see if you can make a difference. And not everybody does that, I mean, I don't. I sit there and I watch movies and hang out on my couch. I could be doing more,
Well,
So
and again,
Sarah, oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm going to say, like, it's not to like beat for anyone to watch it, like, or just hear this and to beat themselves up about it, but just more. I'm just sharing this like out of this space of just for me, like, again, like, just like it's an antidepressant. It's just for me, like, there's just something that I found, like, this other compartment in my heart to joy when like when we were helping to move lumber up a hillside for a family that had had their home destroyed in a hurricane, and for our team and our group to work together to do that, like, I just had such overwhelming intense joy to think, like, we're working together and we're helping this family. Like, we're not doing everything, they still have a lot of work ahead, but just such a privilege to be able to do that. And then I mean, I just have so many stories related to that, but I cut off Celeste, so I'm sorry.
No, no, I cut you off. You're fine. But I was just gonna just relate here for a second to you, because my oldest daughter is Black, and so she's half Black. So we as a family often watch shows and we recognize the discrepancy of races amongst the whole thing, because she was always looking for people that looked like her.
Yeah.
They're just not really there. Dolls don't look like her. Disney princesses don't look like her. Like, there's just not a lot of people that look like her. So I totally can relate to that. And I think it's wonderful that you're out there trying to spread that as a positive thing, because if you do films in Utah, it's not very diverse. And so, you're probably lacking different races there, but it's a positive message, and it's not an anti-white message. That's why I try to tell people, it's like, it's not that we're saying white people shouldn't be in the movies, but there should be more diversity. People want to see themselves. My daughter wanted to see herself. She didn't see herself very often, but she wanted that.
Yeah.
And
I was gonna say, like, sorry, is it okay if I jump in?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't want, I'm so passionate about this particular topic. I'm like, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So when we were filming Even in Dreams, and this was during the pandemic in September and October, I feel like I was, again, this was with my friends Savannah Osler and Steve Diallo, who's their writer, director, producing kind of team. And anyway, in that they had, as a producer, they also had me in charge of doing the extras coordinating. And I feel like I made the job harder for myself and possibly drove them a little crazy, but I was super big on, like, we have to have diversity in our casting. And all along the way, I was like a broken record, like who can we cast that doesn't look like us? Because I'm very aware that when they're looking at it, I'm playing the mother of these two daughters that look like me. Like, I'm like, we are blonde, blue-eyed leading ladies here in this film. We need people that look differently to be represented, and then in the background. So I was very conscientious of just looking for people that are of other races. And again, it's not to say that white people are bad. That's not the direction to go.
Exactly.
It's more just how important it is to see yourself represented in art, in film, whatever it is, to see somebody that looks like you, that is succeeding in life, whatever that is. If you're into cars, to see somebody that looks like you, that's succeeding as a car maker. it's vitally important. And until that's lacking in your life, I think it's hard to comprehend how difficult it is to grow up in a world that you don't feel a part of. And so when I was focused on the background casting, I was super excited. One day we had a local actor he's from Chile, and he's in a wheelchair. And I was hoping, and fortunately our crew did catch on to this, that they would see like, this is a great opportunity. And when you look at some of those scenes, I'm super happy that you can see Asian, you can see Black, you can see somebody that is in a wheelchair, and they're just living life. The story isn't about diversity. It's just people having a conversation in a cafe. And in this cafe, you see people that look like they could be from all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. I think that I'm not sure how many times me and my daughter have been like, oh, there's the token Black person. Because you'll always like throw one in just, to be politically correct. But I think that it's a wonderful topic. It's a wonderful place to have in your heart where you want to include all of God's children, no matter how they look. And it's opening up. It's getting better. Like she found out there was like Black leading roles in a Hallmark movie, and she was over the moon. She was so excited. So anyway, second part, I just want to relate really quick. I know we've got to move on to audience questions, but me and that same daughter went to Kenya on a humanitarian trip for her senior trip. And like you were saying with the kids you were interacting with, the kids we were interacting with had nothing much at all. They really just didn't. And what they had was very worn and used and of not good quality. But let me tell you something, those kids were so happy and full of joy and full of love. And it was a wonderful experience for me and my daughter to realize that it's not the stuff that makes us happy, right? It's genuine like love for one another. And they were just so thrilled that we were there, like building a school for them. Like they were just like they were just so excited. And they had nothing, but they were so happy. But it did open our hearts to realize that, she had never been anywhere. So it was a complete eye-opening experience for her. Like that people lived like that, and that they could be happy with little means. So anyway, when you were telling your story, that kind of came to mind, where they were just so full of joy, no matter they had anything or not, they were just happy.
Yeah, totally. It's like, it's just, I think, and I feel like, and I would imagine for your daughter, something like that, it just puts her on a different course in life, because now if she meets somebody from Kenya, has a conversation started right away. And she's been there. You touched it, taste it, smell it. And when you're doing service, like she feels, I would imagine that she feels that relationship with the people there. And if something comes up in the news about the country, then she's going to be like automatically, more interested and more keenly aware of what that means to those people that she cares about.
Yep. It was a great experience. Okay. I know we totally got off track there, but go ahead, Everett, get us back on.
Okay. No, it's great. There's just so much depth to you, Sarah. I mean, honestly, we could go hours and hours and hours. You've got your humanitarian side, your career at the church, which is interesting as well. I think I'd love to dig more into that. But your acting career, like all of these things, not to mention the LDS dating perspective that we try and kind of keep painting this brush over everything you're doing, just because that's sort of where we're at, right? We're all the LDS singles. But I feel like there's just a depth of stuff to draw from when it comes to discussing topics with you. And I certainly hope you don't feel like we're touching on anything lightly. I mean, just for time's sake, we have to some degree. But I would certainly love to possibly discuss maybe having you on again and going in depth a little more on some of these, because there's just so much to discuss.
That's so nice of you. And I want to say too, thank you all of you, because this is so validating. And it's something that I appreciate about how you all are doing your podcast too, is just the questions that you ask, and then just that you give that time, space, and energy to listen, to whoever is in the hot seat or to me right now. I appreciate each of you for doing that, because it's just so nice and very human of you.
Oh, thank you. We're excited to have you on.
This is the part I know we've had a lot of, I mean, it's been a little bit more distracting because we have a lot of private messages coming our way on this particular podcast because there's a lot of people with a lot of questions for you.
Yep.
So in this part of the podcast, we'd like to open it up. We ask that people raise their hand. Corey, he's the one that knows how to do all this. So he's got a little spiel. If people don't know how to raise their hand in Zoom, it's not as easy in like as in Microsoft Teams or something. But we ask you to raise your hand. And what we'll do is call on people one at a time to either come on, turn on your microphone and camera, or if you would just like to turn on your microphone and ask your question, because maybe you're not wanting to be on camera, that's okay as well. But
some people are in pajamas and enjoying the podcast on the couch. So and that's fine, you know.
Right.
Totally
And we've
fine.
had
We
like,
do want to see the pajamas though. I mean, there's some good ones out there. I mean, you might as
We've
well
seen
show
them.
them off. But if you need to raise your hand, you can click on the Alt key and the Y if you're a Windows user. And if you're a Mac user, you're going to use Option Y, and then that will raise your hand. And if you're on a phone or some tablet or whatever, I'm not sure how that goes. It's somewhere there.
Just keep.
I can't go over all the platforms.
If you can't figure it out, you can send us a private chat, and we can call on you that way as well.
right. And so if nobody raises their hand at this point, we know the audience is like not paying attention because we've had like a bombardment of questions.
There's been
for
so
you
many
during
questions.
the podcast. Yes, it's been like
Crazy.
nonstop. So while we're waiting for our first hand to be raised, if nobody's gonna.
Well, we've got David and Heidi. So.
Oh, do we already?
So we're gonna limit it. We're gonna limit it to about 4 questions because this can go all night if we get like a ton of questions. So first come, first serve.
Let's go with Heidi first, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Come on, Heidi. Heidi. If you have problems getting on, let us know. If you can unmute.
Let's see.
Is she coming? All right.
Oh,
Maybe.
unmute.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you are.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, it kept saying the host has asked you to unmute, and I'm like, well, it's not working. Anyway, so I had just had a really light passing question, but actually got answered in the chat. Anyway, hi, Sarah. My name's Heidi. Good to meet you. Super interesting podcast. I've loved listening to you amongst my 3 boys running around the house. But I just wanted to say I really appreciate the balance and I don't know, I can't think of a better word, just the balance that you seem to display in your life. I think that's really impressive. I think a lot of people, especially in your industry, have a super hard time with that. And your ability to be so grounded is very admirable.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice.
So anyway, yeah, my only question was, it sounded like you speak Spanish fluently. And I was wondering, but someone said, yep, you speak not just Spanish, but what was it, Portuguese and is it Japanese?
Yeah. So it's not like, I mean, I would say I'm very conversational. I like to say that I know enough of these languages to get into trouble, but not to get out. And
Well, Japanese, probably you served a mission in Japan, so you're probably pretty good at Japanese.
Oh, I missed that part. Okay.
Right. So my grandmother is from, and I say this so that people know right out of right away that I'm sincere, like with what I'm sharing. My grandmother's from Saitama Ken Kawaguchi-shi. So obviously I think, like, I'm not making that up. Like that's where she's from. And unfortunately she's passed away, or maybe fortunately, because she was old and it's time to go, but still, like, we're very, very close. And for somebody, if you've grown up with an Asian grandma, like a real Asian grandma, or, let's say like a grandma that wasn't born in the States, there's just like a difference in the culture of discipline, of your interaction, of the level of respect and loyalty that you have to your elders that is so different from what I think, in American culture. Because I remember years ago, he was a fine person, but I was dating a guy in LA, and he was like, well, how come you visit your grandma like every month, at least once, your grandma and your grandpa? I'm like, because it's my grandma, my grandpa, and you've got to visit them. You've got to visit your grandparents. And, and he just couldn't understand that. And another guy this was a long time ago that I dated, that he was like, well, I don't understand why it's such a big deal that you're like a quarter Japanese. Like, it's only a quarter. I'm like, because this is my heritage. Like, this is where we lived when I was growing up. This is my ancestry. It's where I served my mission. It's what I majored in. It's my family. Like this is how, like, when you're around my family, when we start to get more of a group going on, then especially there's some that are not members of the church, some that have served missions, Japanese speaking. And so the way that we're even going to communicate is different, because like when we're talking, if someone starts saying like kusai, then we all know what we're talking about right away. And it's not hard if you speak some a little bit of Japanese. And conversely, like I'm conversational, like in Spanish and Portuguese. Spanish I studied in junior high and high school, and then the Portuguese we used on my mission, and Spanish because in Nagoya, Japan, we taught more lessons and discussions to Brazilians and Peruvians than we did in Japanese, but our member work was in Japanese. And one of my old companions, actually, I don't know, I think she's still on. Oh, and I see Alex Takashi's there too. And I think, maybe one or two of my companions are on that, could attest to how it was in that area. And so it's not perfect when I speak, but I do believe like the better Japanese and Spanish you speak, the better sushi and tacos you get. And
ooh, nice.
if you speak Portuguese, Brazilians are always fun. They're always up for a good time.
Oh, fun. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to listen to you.
Oh, that's so nice of you, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Yep, I'll sign off here.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks.
All right, David, you are in.
Oh, evening.
There you go. Would you like to turn on your video, or you just want audio? Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Hey,
Yeah,
hi.
hello. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Listen, basically, this relates to filming, so I don't want to take the time of everyone else. If you would rather, I could simply put out a message, a private message to you. But I'd like to know. Well, maybe you're beyond doing free film work anymore, but anyway, but we've got something. But even if you're not the right person, maybe you are aware of somebody who would do that still. And like I said, I can give my phone number or something over private message if.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to film work, because I really appreciate like what you're bringing up. I go through my agent, and so if there's anything that you would you're thinking of a project, I go through my agent and filter it through TMG. And then in terms of like working with, sometimes there are passion projects where there is a little budget or no budget. And right. And definitely if the story is great, I think there's a lot of people that are always willing to get on board. And so on Facebook, there are a lot of different film groups, like Utah Film Friends, there's so many just for Utah alone. And I think that that's a great way to just put it out there. If you have an idea, something that you want to do, and just say like, hey, this is what I'm doing. The reality is we have zero budget, but I'm passionate about this story. And then that gives people the opportunity to jump on board if they want to or not. But like for me personally, what I like, people to know is like, hey, absolutely. If you want to consider me for something, then just go through my agent, Vicky at TMG, and then we just work it from there. So that way it keeps her involved, and it also lets her know that I'm thinking of her with any opportunities that come up.
Oh, but sounds like it might be pretty rare that you deal with passion projects anymore.
Well, and again, it's just, that's why I just filter things through Vicky. So that way, at least like it's a good way to just, it lets her know that I'm wanted or needed, or there's opportunities. So yeah, that's where, and again, I think that if you have an idea for something, I say like, put it out there on those Facebook groups and see who's, interested in like shares in that vision.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So David, just real quick before you go, what capacity are you in? Are you a director? Or are you just a producer? Like how do you fit into the whole thing?
Well, Technically, most accurately, I'm a regular man at this point. But you know, I wrote a script, and in fact, well, honestly, I feel like, you know, I wish it would come into the light of, like, you know, TC or something. But anyway, it's yeah, basically. So listen, most accurately, I'm a regular man. Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Fair enough.
Oh.
now
You've got a project that you would like to see come to light, essentially.
Right.
Okay.
Good luck with
Fair
that.
enough. Yeah. I mean, that's how things start, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give up on your dream.
Thank you.
All right. We have
Well, thanks a
somebody
lot.
asked me a private question to ask you, Sarah.
Uh-huh.
Someone is interested in how, I'm assuming your choice of films and roles that you take kind of come into play with this, but someone's curious how you keep professional church standards during your professional work if you're dealing with a male.
Wait, sorry, again, what was that? Like, if professional church standards?
How you keep your church standards during your professional work if you're dealing with a male in like a role. I'm assuming that, I mean, like I said, I don't think you take any roles where you'd be compromised on your
If you have to get
standards,
naked or
but,
do sex scenes or anything
you know, like
that.
how do you manage all that?
Yeah, okay. I was like, if I'm with a male, I was like, so on this one, I think like what's interesting is that the times that I feel I've been pushed the most are with women. Actually, where my standards have been questioned are with women. And I have two specific examples of where and why, like that were in Los Angeles. But I think that what's interesting with the Me Too movement, and something that like I have a different voice to this, because I've heard and witnessed panels and discussions and such where it seems like there's a lot of women that have, I want to say, just this bitterness about like men are against us and blah, blah, blah. And we need to band together as women and do our thing. And I don't subscribe to that, because what I have found is that there was, like, for example, a young photographer that was in Los Angeles that I met, without going into too much detail, but she was, and I was too naive to recognize how the conversation was going, because she was very clear that she liked to take semi-nude photos. I was very clear that I do not. And then when it came to having the photo shoot, she was just kind of like surprised. And there were other people there. So it became like, and two of the people there, I want to say, were women and one man. And they were like, you don't want to do a semi-nude photo? Kind of like, what's wrong? Like, we had discussed this. I'm like, I know, you were very clear you like to do semi-nude. And I was very clear, I will not. And so that became awkward right away. And it's where it becomes a kind of a different layer of complexity, I think, in that kind of situation, is that it's another female that's like, sister, come on, like, I'm a girl, you're a girl. All I'm asking is just, show a little more skin. It's not a big deal. It's because I'm an artistic photographer. And I'm like, no. That's not what I signed up for. This is super uncomfortable. And I don't want to do those kind of pictures. Then there was another time, again, a woman director. This is a small, very super small budget kind of a project years ago in Los Angeles. After we had already gotten into our super low budget, small project, she was like, actually, you know what I've decided is that your character is going to do this kind of a lovemaking scene. Now, this was something that I was not comfortable with. And I'm like, I'm okay with, like, there's kissing between people and such, but the kind of scene and the kind of content that she wanted, I was like, okay, that's something, like, if you want that in your film, that's okay. But I should have known before, because I would not have agreed to already be in the film if I knew that was the direction this character was going to take. So, all due respect to where you want this character to go, that's not for me. So I can bounce out of the project, you can recast, whatever, but I'm not going to do that kind of a scene. But I think when it comes to, like, for me, and not everybody's like this, I'm like, if it's kissing in a scene, okay, that's fine. Like, I can do that, but it doesn't happen for me all the time. Like, the reality is, for me, like, I'm not going to be cast in those kind of parts all the time. So it's not coming up a lot, but the irony is that when I feel like the times that my standards as a female have been pushed, it has been by another female, not by a male.
That's really
Oh,
interesting.
it's the crab. It's the
Never
crab
faced
mentality.
that.
It's like
Yeah.
she's probably done something in her past, and she's just trying to be like, maybe she regrets something she did in her past, and now that she's in the director's seat, she's gonna be like, "Oh, you women got to do the same thing I did, so we're all in the same club."
I don't know with hers, but her, like, I mean, again, these were both, this is not anything church related, nothing connected with any kind of a religion. It was just, you know, working in film in Los Angeles. And I just thought it was interesting. When I brought this up, I feel like there's still some women that kind of want to come back to, no, it's like, you know, there's men that are doing this. And again, there are, you know, I think it's important to recognize, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, there are some people you can trust and there are some people you can't. There's some people that are respectful, and there's some people that will not respect your standards. But I think most of the time, that I feel like enough people before us have already fought those battles. And so if I'm really clear with who I am, then it's going to be okay. Like, because I was doing interning at a background casting office in Hollywood a long time ago. And I remember, so I was not getting paid for it. So this was pretty, like, kind of scraping by kind of a time that was for many years. And I remember the casting director was saying, oh, okay, so we're doing some background acting for this film. They're going to get $500 a day, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, why are you not using me in this? Like, how come you haven't given me the opportunity to be a part of this film? And he was like, Sarah, you're not going to want it. I'm like, well, no, like $500 a day. That's amazing. He's like, Sarah, the wardrobe are colored lenses. It's an orgy scene. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I don't want to be in this scene. And he's like, yeah, that's what I thought. And it was interesting to me that with that particular casting director, and this is just doing extra work or background work, he and I had never had a conversation about religion. We'd never had a conversation about what my standards were, personal life or anything. But just from our interactions, he knew, yeah, Sarah's not going to do this. And so he didn't even approach the subject with me. And when I pushed it, he was like, no, this isn't for you. I know it. So just forget it.
That's awesome. It just shows that you uphold your standards, and people can see that even without you having to say it. Like, they just know who you are and know where you stand, and they're just not going to go down that road. That's awesome.
No, I think that it's some people like him that have been more of maybe a protector or a guardian unwittingly, where he was just like, nah, Sarah doesn't want this. Don't even mention it to her. Don't even give her the idea. Just move on.
That's awesome. All right.
I got one more
We got
question
one
up
more
ahead.
question. We've got Jill. Come on, Jill. It's your turn. Let's see. There she is.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, great. I have a question that's a little more along the lines of dating. And just because sometimes when I'm on a first date, I feel like I'm in an interview. So I'm wondering if sometimes you feel like you're in an audition, or if you're auditioning someone else, like, oh, if you were going to be in a movie, you would be the villain, or you would be the comic relief. Not a whole lot of depth to you, but you like to be funny. Or, you know, do you kind of feel that way when you're dating?
Sometimes I feel like, I think like, and maybe that's where it's just the person just isn't being real, you know. Yeah. Just to put it in simply, you know, simple layman's terms, if someone's not being real. Something that I like that I've heard, again, like, you know, from acting teachers in terms of, you know, like with scene study, and then also with comedy, with comedic, you know, kind of comedy improv type study is, and I like how the teachers will bring it up, is like everything you need, you're going to get from over there. So if you and I were in a scene, or you know, or like if it, and trying to translate to a date, but like if you and I are in a scene, and if I'm just thinking so much about me and what I'm wearing and what I look like and all this stuff, it really, there's not going to be that connection. But if I'm focused on you and what's happening over there and what I'm getting from you, and like, if I'm focused on like, okay, this is the question she's asked, this is like, I'm treating it like it's gold, and I've got my attention on you, then however I'm going to respond naturally is going to come from ideally the best place in me. Like is what I think. Like it's going to come from a real place. And conversely for you, if we both have that kind of connection, and if it's applied in a comedic scene, then what you see are just those scenes that are hilarious because they're both focused on the other person and they're treating what they get from the other person like it's gold and just building off of it. And it's like, it's that yes and is, you know, the phrase that comes up, that kind of mentality. And when it comes to dating, if I am thinking about like myself and my baggage and the times that I've been hurt before and why I don't trust and blah, 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 then I think men, if I'm, you know, I like men. So with a man, like he's going to automatically get that sense of like, okay, like she's not present. Like I don't have words for it, but she's thinking about something else and she's got, you know, a lot of baggage and things that she needs to resolve, and it's just a turn off. But if I'm being present and I'm focused on what I'm getting from him and the conversation, and conversely, if he's doing the same, then it's going to go somewhere. But I think that I don't know if I don't feel like I'm addressing your question very well, but I guess
you don't really like to label people, like, you know, some people that have studied, oh, you're a type A personality, you can just real quick kind of put a role on somebody, like, okay, you would be the antagonist in my movie, or, you know, something.
I feel like it's easier to compartmentalize people and to put a label on like, oh, they have this kind of personality, they're a type A, or they're a blue white, and so they're going to be like this. But I think it's a lot harder to just take the individual and be like, okay, this is, so right now we're going to say like, okay, so this is Jill. This is Jill. She comes with her own unique experience. And if I'm going to be present with her, then I'm not going to try to categorize her and say like, she's just like, you know, everybody that has blonde hair, and people that have blonde hair all like the color purple. And so we're just going to, you know, assume that I know this about her. But rather it takes a lot of work and effort for me to be present with someone and be like, okay, this is this person's unique set of life experience. And then, but again, for myself, what I go with is like a gut check, whether it's like from acting or just my life experience and where I've been, of just recognizing like, is this person telling me the truth, and am I being truthful with them? And, you know, and just to always come from a place of being real, being truthful, and
I taking the time to get to know them for who they are and what they've been.
Yeah, and not assume that just because, like, if I were to pick on Corey or Everett and be like, oh, guys that wear baseball caps, they're all like this. Guys that are bald, they're all like this. But to just really take them as an individual. And when I'm listening to them, not be thinking about an agenda of what else am I going to say next, but just to be present with what am I getting from this person? What am I hearing? And without any kind of a judgment or label, and, you know, that just takes more work. But at the same time, I guess as I'm talking, I still believe that there's like safety for men and women on dates, I think is important, because there's women that don't have good intentions just as much as there are men that don't have good intentions.
Yeah, sure.
I would say it's less so with guys with ball caps. They usually have pretty good intentions. I think so.
Thank you, Jill. That was an awesome question. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming and participating. Is there anybody else?
Okay, so yeah, I think we're a little over now. But Sarah, I am so impressed. I want to know like more, like I want to just speak to you like more like in depth on each one of your issues. But
oh my gosh, that's so nice of you.
What's that?
That's so nice of you to say that.
Well, I mean, there's just a part of me that's like, I feel like we just hit surface level, Sarah, tonight. And you're deep. So that just didn't do it justice. You know what I mean?
I agree.
We need to have you back. We need to have you back soon.
Yeah. I just skim a lot of the topics. There was a lot of questions coming at me and I couldn't get very many of them.
Yeah. I got to apologize because I feel like this was the most distracting podcast to do, because it was just like personal like messages and questions flying all over the place. Like, oh my gosh, like I gotta stay
Yeah.
focused here and then field questions there. But I have really enjoyed this. So I really appreciate you coming on here. And don't be surprised if we reach back out. Hopefully you would agree to come back and we can dig a little more deeper. And you let us know, because I feel like we can go down any of those channels, right? Like we can talk about your humanitarian efforts. We can talk about acting more. We can talk about like your church service, whatever you like want to go down. And we could probably spend a whole podcast just on that. I kind of feel like we did you a disservice because there's so much. We just didn't have time to cover everything.
It's true. We didn't even get to her like sushi making and like what kind of dancing do you like to do? Like,
oh, I love that. Yeah, I like to eat good food. I love sushi. I like bachata dancing, you know, and I love Argentine folk music.
She's got a lot of depth there. We've got lots of things we didn't even get to.
I'm a seafood lover, but I struggle with sushi. It's just never been, I don't like that real fishy taste. And everybody always says, oh, you just haven't had good sushi. Every time I try good sushi, it ain't good sushi. So
well, it's not for everybody. I mean, honestly, like, because the first time, like for me, the first time I had sushi, I was 8 years old and I thought it was Jello. And we were at like, it was my great grandfather's 50th anniversary from passing away. So it was a ceremony kind of a thing in Japan. And I thought it was a thing of Jello. And my 8-year-old self is like sticking this big piece of tuna into my mouth. And I was like, oh, it's awful. So I know it is an acquired taste because I didn't like it at that time, but now like I love it. And that's what I, you know, would live off of given the choice. And but I want to just say thank you to everybody for just tuning in and being supportive, because I think like, and I guess like this is to me, I feel like what is beautiful about life and about humanity and why I'm passionate about storytelling, whether it's through acting and also like when it comes to service or church, is just to recognize the humanity in each of us, and that we're all brothers and sisters, and that there's more that we have in common than not in common. And then just to be able to champion each other, or like even Celeste, you sharing about your daughter and wanting to see herself represented in film. I mean, like to me, I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, that's what we want. Like, you know, for someone like your daughter to be able to feel when she's going to see a movie or watch something on Hallmark, that she's just not on the outside of a house looking in at people having a sweet little life, but that she's a part of this, you know, story of the human experience.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's a good topic. I could go off for quite a while on that one. So
yeah.
Another podcast.
Yep.
So
yep.
Well, Sarah, again, I appreciate it. This is kind of the part where what we end up doing with this is we kind of wrap up the show, and then we open it up for anybody who would like to turn on their microphones and camera. And we have what's called the after party, where it's just sort of an open forum. People can ask questions, they can talk. You're not under any obligation to turn on your microphone or camera if you would like to just kind of remain in the background, but we certainly allow people to just sort of have more of it's kind of almost like a free for all. I hate to use that word or that term, but it's just more open for everybody. So having said that, I will go ahead and say again, thank you for being on the show tonight. If you haven't done so already, please give us a like on Facebook. Subscription on YouTube always helps as well. We love having you, and we hope you join us again next time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and